Apparently, we now need to be worried about the SEC just breaking off from everybody else. Guys, come on. Come on. It's only been 3 straight years without making the title game. It'll get better.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. North Dakota State's schedule is here in full. They could feel like UNLV last year, at least at the start. And speaking of fortuitous schedules, perhaps none better for a first-year head coach than Matt Campbell up at Penn State. That's on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Christian Rao of Locked On Kansas State is here to discuss the piece that came out yesterday from Ross Dellenger over at Yahoo Sports. And I'm sure for a lot of folks, Christian, there was some pretty surprising language and verbiage used in that piece. And I do want to stress that what Greg Sankey's comments reflect is that the mood is not this is happening next week, that the SEC would say, nope, you can't enforce tampering or NIL rules or anything, so we're going to just play our own sport and not play against anybody else. It wasn't entirely clear whether it meant they wouldn't play non-conference games or if they would try to create their own league. Not entirely certain. The point of the piece was to showcase that there is real frustration in the SEC because of things like tampering, because of things like a lack of enforceable NIL rules. And we all agree on that. But I mean, I just don't know how the SEC would realistically one day ever actually break away and just say, no, we're not playing anybody else. You're not going to play any big Ohio State, Texas canceled this year. And what do you make of all this? Because I was pretty shocked to read that.
Yeah, first and foremost, if any conference was going to try this, the SEC, I think, would be able to be the right one to try it. But regardless of that, it would be a terrible idea. You're basically turning in a power conference into what would be college football's UFL. That would be basically what you try to turn into if you made one conference leave or whatever the case may be, and then you're taking away the chance of, you're not fighting for a national championship anymore. You're saying that you're a regional champion. So how does that help you at all? I think that actually hurts you in the long run. But I do understand the frustration because there's a ton of tampering going on. Everybody knows the tampering happens. It's not just the Dabo Swinney thing that happened a few weeks ago that just lit the eyes under everybody. That's not what changed this. Everyone knows that tampering's happening. Coaches are privately admitting it, that players are contacted before entering the transfer portal. And I think the biggest issue here, whether you're an SEC believer, you're a Big Ten fan, whatever the case may be, if you're a fan of the MAC, the system of the NCAA already went professional because no one believes the NCAA has any jurisdiction. They lost all control once the NIL became legal. It's basically a free agency. There's endorsements now, transfer mobility. It's terrible. And that's what I got from this piece was the NCAA is just another joke. Any kind of governing body you thought they had, it's just not there. And teams or conferences, like the SEC and the Big Ten are just leading this charge.
Well, that's why the NCAA is using things like the Trinidad Chambliss case and others to try to pile up data to showcase Congress why they should get an antitrust exemption. And that's a discussion that at least has gotten the ball rolling on Friday in Washington, D.C. with everyone that convened, and there were a lot of people there. And, Joel Klatt made the point that it's a bad look to not have had any student athletes there at that summit. I get the optics of it isn't good. I don't know that. I mean, first of all, I don't know who you would send exactly. TJ Finley.
Yeah. I mean, that would probably be the key.
Yeah. I mean, if Julian Sayin were there, would we feel way better about it? Because I really wouldn't. But I just want to go back to the premise of what got discussed. And again, not that this would happen this year, or the indication was maybe not next year, but it's just something that continues to circulate, is the SEC, if they were to just leave and play their own league, even or not have any non-conference games, the college football playoff would not go with them.
No.
If you're the college football playoff, do you want to have just the SEC, or do you want to have an actual playoff with the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12? Oh, by the way, the SEC hasn't been in your title game any of the last 3 years, which I think just hammers home the idea of what I'm talking about, that, yeah, the SEC would be able to make a product that SEC fans would watch, but why would anybody else? You would lose national interest. You would lose national respect. And you would make, by the way, a worse product for SEC fans. I don't know who wins in that regard. I think this is just coaches and ADs, on background venting frustrations.
100%. Nobody wins in this situation. SEC fans, college football fans, fans of anything, of any sport, it doesn't win, because at the end of the day, the media value would actually drop for SEC, whether it's just a regional focus or not, because, as you mentioned, that national interest, the fact that if there's only going to be the Iron Bowl, and that's like the key, or the only thing is going to be the fact that if the SEC breaks away, then their champion becomes the SEC champion, not the national champion. Not only is that prestige loss of arguably the best conference in college football, not last couple of years, maybe not, but arguably yes, you lose all of that, and then it takes away the media love for it. Media value actual drops. If the SEC breaks away, right, there wouldn't be the kings of college football anymore. I think you can still give them the crown, although they haven't been the national champs for the last couple of years. I think the SEC deserves that for what they've been for the last decade or so. They just be the best team in a regional league, and I don't think that's the right move by any means.
No, I don't see it as being that at all. And the Big Ten has passed the SEC as being the top conference in college football. The SEC is squarely number 2. I'm not trying to tell you the SEC's fallen down to 5th and that the Pac-12 has got him beat, got him on the ropes. But I just think of this whole notion, it calls me back to Ted Lasso and that whole notion that, they were going to create that super league and take all of that away. Like, is that really what you'd want to do? And I want your take on this as well. Do you think any part of this is rooted in just a continued generalized feeling of insecurity down in SEC country because they have lost their grip on the sport? Like, I legitimately wonder how much that has to do with it, because they do not run the sport on the field the way that they used to. They are still relevant. They are still very good, but it's not the way that it used to be. And I wonder if there's actually a growing frustration. And Ross Dellenger, very good reporter over at Yahoo Sports, so I'm inclined to believe what he's written on the matter. If there is really this growing frustration amongst SEC coaches and athletic directors, I just wonder if it isn't an outgrowth of the fact that they're trying to find some sense of control.
I would see that actually happening. I could see that most definitely happening. Look, we've seen some quotes in the really nice piece by Ross Dellenger by some of the leaders of Georgia. Obviously, Commissioner Sankey said some things as well, talking about the fact that if they don't do certain things, if the settlement doesn't happen, if some things are going to be enforced, then they need to create some more rules of level of responsibility themselves. That was the Georgia president, Moorhead, that said that. Overall, I think, going back to Ted Lasso, I think the SEC needs to have a 10-second memory. They need to be goldfish. They need to forget about the last couple of years and what the Big Ten has done, because college football over the last couple of years with the NIL bringing in, they have leveled the playing field. The SEC needs to adapt or die. That needs to happen. And if it's not working, then they have to find a way to level the playing field themselves and get back into the business of getting back to the national championship. We've had these conversations. We've had these fights about certain SEC teams not making the college ball playoffs. Alabama's in years past, things like that. And it's just not working. It's not happening. So if they need to get themselves back, find a way to do it. That's where I'm sitting right now. I'm rambling now, but my God, I do think that the SEC, if they broke away, it would be a terrible, terrible move, not just for them, but for college football fans in general. Yeah,
I don't think anybody would seriously benefit. And again, it doesn't seem like it's their preferred option. It just seems like it's gaining more and more momentum. And look, the point of their frustration being that NIL deals aren't being policed properly as they would like by the College Sports Commission, or things aren't enforceable because there's no antitrust exemption, meaning everything goes to the courts and then it's just a straight business deal. And well, you can't really restrict people's movement in a professional capacity, which is what is, being ruled basically time and again by judges all across the country. I don't think that frustration is founded in nothing. I just think even the suggestion that it's gotten this far, that it could have even more momentum as the months and years go on, that they'd say, all right, we'll just break away or do one thing. Like, God, come on.
SEC hypotheticals are always one thing, right? In this world of college football. So look,
they've never lost one of those, I've heard. Never lost.
Atlanta's their biggest media hub, probably. But if you went into your own bubble and you became just the SEC champions of the world, not national champions, you're missing out on New York, you're missing out on Chicago, you're missing LA. Who would care about the SEC other than Atlanta and the Southeast? It would be a terrible decision.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Christian Rao, Locked On Kansas State. Always great to have you on the show. Always great to have the chance to talk about one of my growing favorite stories in college football. The North Dakota State Bison schedule is here. Well, it's not going to be a cakewalk. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now, you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Check out Robinhood today. This episode also brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, nobody likes that either. Emailing back and forth, do they really get your situation? This year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Check out Intuit TurboTax today. It is finally here. At long last, we have it. North Dakota State's full first schedule in the Mountain West. This is very quickly, here in the early part of March, becoming one of my favorite storylines in all of college football. This is a legitimately fun realignment move. I don't enjoy all of them because sometimes there are seriously negative or harmful effects. This is one I'm on board with. It just makes sense for everybody. The Bison have maxed out what they can do at the FCS level. The Mountain West needed a school. It's reasonably in their geographic footprint. I'm here for it. So, I'm not suggesting that North Dakota State is going to push for the college football playoff this year. I mean, that would be crazy, and it would be, I'm trying to think of something that would be crazy by comparison. That's just unfathomable. That's just something that certainly isn't going to happen. Like Indiana winning the national championship, something crazy or insane like that. I'm just saying I've seen wilder. So, North Dakota State opens with Jacksonville State. That's a week 0 game. They play that at home. Then they play Fordham the next week. They will be favorites in both of those games at home. And that fan base, that program, the players, coaches, everybody will be invigorated with Mountain West juice. I don't have any reservations about them winning those two games. Then they play at Air Force, who was 4-8 last year. Now, under Coach Calhoun, they have been a very good program for a long time. Is it reasonable to expect a bounce back? Sure. Is that a little bit harder with the transfer portal for service academies? Yes, that is also true, but that's a road game. Got to go up to Colorado Springs. Let's see how it goes. Then, in the crossover group of 5 sicko knowledge ball game of the year on September 19th, they have a MAC non-conference game against Sacramento State. These programs were in premier FCS conferences in 2025, and they are playing a non-conference group of 6 football game in 2026. What a world. What a time to be alive. Then they play Wyoming at home and then at UNLV. Let me just stop and let me just throw a suggestion at you here, because they have a bye before they get into the meat of their Mountain West schedule, which has got Wyoming, UNLV, Nevada, New Mexico, UTEP, Hawaii, Northern Illinois, and San Jose State. Those first 4 games, I fully expect, guaranteeing nothing, I fully expect North Dakota State to be favored in all 4 of those games. Maybe they'd be a slight dog, but I don't think by very much, going to Air Force, but I really doubt it. So when you ponder what is possible for North Dakota State this year, a 4-0 beginning is right there on the table. And last year with UNLV, who they will play on October 10th in Las Vegas. If I am able to go, I live less than 2 hours away, I would love to go watch that football game. Dan Mullen just had a great first season. He won double-digit games. He was in the Mountain West Championship game. He brought in a bunch of new players. You don't know how that transition's going to go when one coach leaves. Barry Odom goes to Purdue. Dan Mullen takes over. I thought they'd do pretty well. They did better than I expected. But here was the thing. Earlier in the year, I felt like UNLV was a little bit of a fraud relative to their record. And a couple times throughout the season, they got exposed for that. By the end of the year, though, because they had stacked up all these wins, they almost lost to Idaho State in week 1. Idaho State, who played 2.5 hours up the road from Allegiant Stadium, where they almost beat UNLV, and got beat soundly by Southern Utah. I know, I was calling the game. And Idaho State was not a great FCS school last year. Almost beat UNLV. But the Rebels, with an atrocious defense, but an explosive offense, just kept finding ways to win over and over again. So then, once they got to the difficult games, they had started to settle into a rhythm. They had the confidence of a 4-0, 5-0 football team, and they wound up winning 10 games. And I look at the toughest games on this North Dakota State schedule and say, number 1 is the reigning Mountain West runner-up, UNLV, on the road on October 10th. That's one of your tougher games. 2 weeks later, probably your second toughest game, at worst, third. They have to go to New Mexico, who's going to be a contender in this league. And then November 14th, they have to play at Hawaii. Now, those 3 teams, in no particular order, UNLV, New Mexico, Hawaii, it's actually a pretty rough draw for the Bison to have all of them on the road. There's some interesting games at home. They get Wyoming at home, Nevada at home, Northern Illinois, also a realignment school from the offseason at home. But having to play all 3 of UNLV, New Mexico, and Hawaii on the road removes any possibility. And I sincerely hope the Bison will be eligible for the conference championship and college football playoff. But let's just assume that all gets itself worked out, which it should. Will it? We'll see. But those 3 games are definitely tough. Here's the crazy thing, though. If you think it's just out of the realm of possibility that North Dakota State could step into the league this year and make an impact in what I perceive to be the 3rd best group of 6 conference in the country, even after they lost 5 really strong schools to the New World Pac-12. In the 2026 recruiting cycle, when you factor in, according to 24/7, the high school and transfer portal rankings into one cohesive metric, they are ahead. They are ahead this year, just slightly, but still in front of Hawaii, who's a Mountain West Conference title contender this year, and San Jose State, who maybe is not. They are also ahead of Air Force. That's a third of the league that they're going up against. 7th out of 10 in year 1, not a bad place to be. Now, If I asked you just to take a big picture look at the Mountain West real quick, if I asked you who is number one in total team talent acquisitions in the offseason, who would you guess? If you said UNLV, you would be correct because it's the Rebels, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. There's a reason the Pac-12 wanted to go after UNLV. They've had a proof of concept with two coaches over the last several years in football, and it's a place where you have a decent amount of talent in your backyard. And I think going into 2026, they are my prohibitive favorite to win the Mountain West. Are they as much of a runaway favorite as Boise State has been in past years? No, I certainly don't think so. But let me just throw something else out there. And look, maybe this never comes up again on the show. Maybe this is just a throwaway comment in March that most of you don't remember. But let me just give you something for your consideration. Do you know who number 2 in the Mountain West in team talent is for the class of 2026, high school and portal together? It's Northern Illinois. Just saying. Just saying. How high is the threshold to have one of the best rosters in that league? What could Northern Illinois do? Let's find out. This feels as open of a group of 6 league as is out there. I think if you look at the Pac-12 landscape, Boise State, probably your favorite going into the year. In the American, will Tulane be the same? We'll see. Will Memphis be the same? We'll see. They both lost their coaches this past offseason. That league could be pretty wide open. I think the Mountain West is very open. UNLV slightly ahead, but I tell you what, it might be a rough first year because of those 3 road games for North Dakota State, but overall, they could just start to be a confident bunch if they can start 4-0, go into the bye, and then they'll roll off 7 straight Mountain West games. I think that could be very, very interesting. Keep an eye on what unfolds in Fargo this year. You should also keep an eye on the best accidental coaching hire of the offseason. Well, actually, that's an interesting thought experiment. Did Penn State or Michigan accidentally stumble into a great hire harder? I don't know, but I know Penn State's one of them, and they have got a great schedule. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want. Rivalry games, random matchups in the big dance, ranked matchups, whatever works for you. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with whichever team you follow throughout the season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. And my everydayers out there know what time it is. It is time, once again, for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, or cotton candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number 1 pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. I have not wavered, not a single time. I'm not one of those draft analysts that's saying, I think this guy's going to rise up, even though there's no new film or no new stats. No, strawberry watermelon. My number 1 pick on the board, without question. No doubter. High floor, high ceiling, huge upside with strawberry watermelon. I'm all about it. If you want something a little sweeter like confetti craze or cotton candy, those flavors are available as well. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots. Available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Check them out at 5 Hour Energy. That's the number 5hourenergy.com. Could Penn State have the easiest schedule in the entire Big Ten? The simple answer is yes, they might. That's good news for Matt Campbell and my guest, Zach Sako of Locked On Nittany Lions. So the non-conference aside, which is, of course, bad for college football that Penn State is playing nobody interesting. Like, even if it was a lower level game, maybe like an SMU or somebody or even a Cal or some other team or somebody out of the Big 12. Wouldn't that be more fun? Wouldn't that be maybe Iowa State? Somebody like that to spice up the non-conference. Wouldn't that be more fun? Yeah, anyway, they're playing Marshall Temple in Buffalo. So it'll be a good start for Matt Campbell and company. And then it works out so perfectly because you get 3 tune-ups with this brand new roster and brand new coaching staff. And then you go through and the Big Ten schedule is, I don't know who Matt Campbell, did the opposite of ticking off at the Big Ten office, but it was somebody, wasn't it?
Maybe they just wanted to give him a nice welcome to the Big Ten, right, and give him a favorable schedule, or help out the other guy who's now at Virginia Tech, right? So
yeah, maybe that was their thinking. This would have been the year.
I don't know why you need me. You laid it out perfectly with the way that their schedule is and everything else. But what a shame that it is that Penn State would need to go outside the Big Ten to get that elite matchup, right? So it kind of shows a little bit of the power structure within the Big Ten, that you get this random conference schedule. Now, Penn State's going to make up for it. What goes around comes around. It's an easy schedule in 26, 27, 28. That's the schedule that some schools are playing this year. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, right? You get the gauntlet next season for Penn State. So, but the Big Ten should be able to operate, right? You're playing 9 conference games in Penn State, USC, Michigan, and then that's really it. Okay, Washington. I respect that trip to Washington, but when I look at the power structure of the Big Ten for this season, Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, those are your elite teams in whatever order you want to put them in, that's fine. I'm just rattling them off. Then in the second group, Michigan, USC. Now, I agree until proven otherwise, Penn State would be the third team, but I think Penn State's in that second tier. So this is an easy schedule. This is a favorable schedule, and maybe Penn State surprises some people with how far they get, right? You go 11-1, we're talking the potential of them getting into a Big Ten championship game, which is absolutely doable. You lose to Michigan on the road, you can win all those other games. USC's at home. You can upset USC. You can win at the road. You can win on the road against this Washington team that I think is a similar caliber to Penn State. None of these matchups are Penn State's going to be a 14-point underdog. No, these are all most likely 1-score spreads and winnable games for Penn State.
Yeah, no Indiana, no Oregon, no Ohio State is a wild run of things, and it's really a 3-game schedule that will happen in a 4-game span.
Yeah.
From a national standpoint, the interest level, look, it's never going to be 0 for me here on the show, especially their Big Ten opener at home against Wisconsin. I think that's a sneaky, interesting matchup because I had this thought and want your take on it, Seiko. That game could very well be a Big Ten version of the Ireland curse. Are you familiar with the Ireland curse?
I guess Penn State won its Ireland game when they were out there, so
right.
I'm not
but
entirely sure.
The last 2 years, here are the teams that have gone to Ireland early in the year and lost. Kansas State, massive letdown their Chris Kleiman no longer their head coach. Year before, Florida State, worst preseason top 10 team in the history of college football. There's a bit of a trend. Scott Frost at Nebraska lost, I think it was 2022. And that eventually led to his firing, the hiring of Matt Rule, one time a Penn State target. But, Of course, that did not come to fruition there. I look at that Wisconsin game, and Wisconsin will already have played, I believe it's Alabama in the non-conference slate, and Penn State won't have played anybody. But I just think the importance for Penn State to prove they belong in the Big Ten with the roster they have this year, and for Wisconsin to find some sort of momentum when they'll already have one loss, and Luke Fickell is coaching for his job every single year. I think that game against Wisconsin, I don't think it'll get a lot of hype. It has many times over the years. I don't think it'll be super buzzed about or talked about nationally. It'll fly under the radar, but I could see that game sending one team, the loser obviously, in a negative direction.
Yeah, it's and that's a shame for the Big Ten, right? Why is Wisconsin? Hey, that's what you get for firing Paul Chryst, right? And that's what everybody says is going to be Penn State's future, is that they. But you also have to be able to adapt with the times, right? We hear all of these reports or rumblings that, hey, Wisconsin's just not spending any money. Oh, okay, well, this is the new day and age of college football. I imagine that maybe Paul Chryst would have probably taken a step back as Wisconsin's head coach. Okay, before I go in that tangent, my point above all else is that the Nittany Lions, their schedule is based on the Big Ten, and we've seen Indiana rise up, but why not Wisconsin? Why not Minnesota? Why not some of these other programs? Okay, Purdue and Northwestern, I'm not really going to expect on a year-to-year basis. But how does Penn State play 9 conference games and 2 of them, maybe 3, are legitimate, I suppose?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a massive opportunity for Matt Campbell to earn the respect of his fan base and his donor base there in Happy Valley in year 1. He's got a veteran quarterback. We'll see how the rest of the roster shakes out. But, I mean, last year, if you'd put Rocco Becht in the Big Ten, I think he would have been right in the middle. He would not have been at the bottom.
I remember the rankings that said he was better than Drew Aller.
Rocco Becht?
At the beginning of the season, there were people that were bold enough to say that Rocco Becht was a top 10 quarterback in college football last year.
Not me. Hey, I like Rocco Becht. I did not have him above Drew Aller a season ago. But I think that if you put him last year at the end of the season compared to the rest of the Big Ten quarterbacks, he'd probably be somewhere around 8th. He'd probably be 7th or 8th. He's solid. He's not elite. He's not bad. He's experienced. There's a lot of value in that. But
I think like to see him healthy. What happens when he's healthy? What happens when he has depth at running back, a better offensive line? That's what I want to see.
Okay? He was in the Big 12 championship game against Arizona State.
That doesn't happen by accident.
No.
Okay. So Rocco Becht is a very capable quarterback with the potential to be a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten. With you get more pass catchers. So he brings over with him from his friends from Iowa State, but he also gets to retain some of the talent that's at Penn State. In the tight end room, you get a better offensive line. Okay, but it's the same coaching. Okay, but you get a better supporting staff overall with what you have now at Penn State. That's the point of this, is that Penn State, yes, has a favorable schedule, but you also have the best that Iowa State is bringing over, plus most of the best of what Penn State was able to retain. Sure, there's some players that I would have loved for Penn State to have brought back, but you're getting all conference caliber, multi-year starters from Iowa State, and the same thing from Penn State with what we believe is a really good college football coach. Before Matt Campbell showed up at Iowa State, everybody said, hey, this guy's just a big program away from being one of the elite coaches in college football. Okay, now's his chance to prove it.
Yeah, and I think for this year, if it's going to be an elite season, it'll be defined in the stretch from October 10th to November 7th. 4 games, 3 legit matchups. We'll see what Purdue is in year 2 under Barry Odom. I don't have wild expectations there, but USC at Michigan, hosts Purdue at Washington. That stretch, 2 on the home, 2 on the road, I think that's really what Penn State's season boils down to, is how they perform in those games. They go 2-2. They probably are good enough to go 10-2. Maybe they slip up somewhere against like a Minnesota and wind up at 9-3 or Wisconsin. But if they get through that stretch, Seiko, at 3-1, we're probably talking about a 10-win Penn State team.
This is why the move was made, because they were tired. Penn State got tired of losing the games that it was always supposed to. There was never any change. Penn State won every single game it was supposed to, but also lost every game it was supposed to. That's what Matt Campbell's supposed to do, is that, okay, Michigan and USC are games that you're not supposed to win this year. Win at least one of them. I feel like there's going to be a seismic shift at Penn State if that happens, when that happens.
Yeah, seismic shift. Indeed. Zach Seiko, Locked On Nittany Lions, great as always. We wrap the show there today. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.